Good evening, everyone. It is 6 o'clock on this October 10th of 2023, and we're going to call this meeting to order, and we'll begin. If Ms. Danielle, you would do the roll call for us, please.
Mayor, Vice Mayor Love. Here. Councilman Carter.
Present.
Councilman Fan.
Here.
Councilman Fennell.
Here.
Councilwoman George. Here. Councilman Hayes.
Present.
And Councilman Javons.
Present.
Mayor, we have a quorum.
Everyone is here. Thank you all. We have no minutes this evening, so we'll move on to public recognition. This is the only period of the meeting, because it is a work session, a committee meeting, that we will have public comments. So whether something is on the agenda or not on the agenda, you are welcome to speak to it at this time. You'll have 5 minutes to speak, and we do ask that you give us your name and address for the record. But with that, public recognition is now open. You may come forward if you'd like to speak. Well, I see not one soul. So, oh, okay. Late to the party now. Almost hit that gavel.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. My name is Joe Wallace. I live at 445 Wallace Road, Gallatin, Tennessee. The last time I was here, you've got some new members, but the last time I was here, said that I've been a long-term resident. I'm 75 years old, and I've lived here all my life except for 4 years. Those 4 years were in the United States Coast Guard, and I made kind of a joke about Sumner County not having a coastline, so they sent me elsewhere. I want to correct that, or clarify it, because there are fellow Coast Guardsmen tending the buoys on the navigation along the rivers in Sumner County, and they're Coast Guard taking care of boat safety. So a great shout out to them. I was just fortunate enough to get into aviation, and we actually did not have an aviation base in the Coast Guard in Sumner County. But I'm really proud. I came back here and spent my life here, and I'm proud of the things. I'm 75, and what amazes me the most, and I'm speaking in favor of item number 6 of the industrial acquisition. What amazes me most at 75 is that when I'm retired, and how many retired people seem to forget that the only thing that really matters in terms of growth and production is a job. And that's the reason I'm for it. It's because of jobs. Several years ago, I retired from being a real estate appraiser, state licensed. So I'm not an expert unless you look at it as an ex, past tense. And some of the things that I will mention come from that background. And one is, when you look at the price of something, you look at comparables. And there'll be other people more qualified than me that talks about comparables in terms of the price per acre. Then you make adjustments. And adjustments are based on a multitude of factors. One of the factors that doesn't enter into the adjustment is what the current owner paid for it. And the reason it doesn't is because there are a lot of hidden, out-of-sight factors that you don't have the benefit from. In my case, I know that most of that comes from family and or friends of family, that someone is allowed to buy something under market value. And so it really doesn't have an influence. It's good to know that so you have an understanding, but it doesn't have a direct influence on the value of a piece of property. Comparables are the main thing that have it. If you really want to reach out and doubt that, then you could ask Facebook or Meta or whatever corporation it is called now that takes care of their real estate. If you could go buy 200, 300, 400 acres of their property that's vacant out there right now for $50,000 an acre, and just let me know how long it takes for them to laugh before they say, go fish. You know, that they're just not going to sell it for that price. And that's just the way we live. I come from a background 75 years ago, literally land sold for $75 an acre. You know, well, those days are gone, you know. So I want to encourage you to think about jobs, because that's the driving thing. You cannot be a consumer, shop, go to restaurants, and all of that kind of stuff without a job. You can do it for a while, you know, on some sort of handout program, but in the long term, you can't. 2020 showed us that depending on China to provide all of our stuff is not good, and all the big shots know that. And they're bringing industry back to the United States. They're not going to bring the dirty industry. They'll leave that over there in China. But they're bringing clean jobs back to the United States. And it's not going to stop because they're not going to get caught again like they were in 2020. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Wallace.
Hi, my name's Rachel Griggs, and I live at 462 Dobbins Pike, the corner of Gibbs Lane and Dobbins Pike. I am talking about item number 6. I love my piece of property, but I wish that some of you would come and watch the traffic that comes in and out of Gibbs Lane and Dobbins Pike. We had a wreck there last year that you can never get out of your head because of the images that the guy sitting there dying. I have young grandkids. There is tons of school traffic that comes, people fly down Gibbs Lane. The last I looked, it was 30 or 35 going down through there. Tons of dump trucks coming in and out, flying down the road. People fly down Dobbins Pike. Traffic is horrible. I would like to know how purchasing that much property would benefit the people that live on Dobbins Pike. How are you going to help traffic? How are you going to help that intersection at Gibbs Lane without taking more of my property to benefit someone else? No, I'm not a city taxpayer, but I don't know how some places can get zoned for city and pieces of property sitting on each side of it is zoned county. Never notified, never anything in the mail, nothing. I don't know how that got passed because we didn't know. We weren't here to speak about it. So yes, I think it does affect everybody in that community if you're trying to put a turning lane in at some point, if you purchase that property. I don't have a problem with you purchasing the property. I have a problem with the traffic that's already there. I have a problem that I don't know how much more my property that y'all are going to take. That's not fair. I would hope that you would think about the people that live in those communities that work hard and farm and have cattle, that have horses, that have hogs, that have goats, that have chickens, whatever it may be. We like our animals. We like to farm. We grow hay. We bale hay. We rake hay. Some of y'all may not have farmed, but that's what my family did growing up. It's kind of like you got my back, I got yours. And I hope that y'all think about us people in those communities sitting there wondering what's going to happen when it's already going on and we don't know anything about it. We would like to be informed. I live at 462 Dobbins Pike. I would love for somebody to come and sit down and talk to us in that community. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Briggs. Anyone else wishing to speak under public comment this evening? Okay, seeing no one, public recognition will be closed. And we will move along to mayor's comments. I have several things this evening. First of all, huge shout out to Downtown Gallatin on the Main Street Festival this last weekend. never have I seen people parked all the way down to the Save-A-Lot as densely as they were, and they absolutely were parked all the way down there. It was almost gridlock of people uptown at certain points on Saturday. So certainly the highest number of attendance, and I'd heard that it was the highest number of vendors ever. So great event. They did a lot of work on that, and they certainly should be commended for that. I also want to, thank our police and fire departments, and especially our public works department for all the work that they did, keeping it looking clean. I drove through that afternoon, right after they opened the streets, and it looked like all that had never even happened. I couldn't believe how clean the streets were. So they did a tremendous job during the day. They also did a tremendous job preparing for it. It's the fresh mulch and all the pruning and everything that's been going on up there. So my compliments on that. Also, for those of you who may be wondering, we're all wearing pink GFD, Gallatin Fire Department shirts. Several years ago, and Chief Beeman, you tell me if I'm wrong on this, but I think I'm right on this. Several years ago, we had a firefighter's wife who was fighting breast cancer, and I think this is where that tradition began. So every October, in honor of Breast Cancer Awareness Month, they do shirts for their firefighters to be able to wear when they are in their stations, and they gave us all one this year, and so we're wearing it for both breast cancer awareness and Gallatin Fire Department. Way to go. Another thing that I want to mention, and this is really just a mention of opportunity, because there's a gentleman here that doesn't like much attention, but I just have the perfect opportunity to give it to him tonight, and that's Mr. Holland sitting back there. If you don't know, he's taken care of that triangle across from the Crystal for years and years and years, and he always does a fabulous job. He and his staff do a beautiful job on that little triangle of land, making it look pretty as you come into our downtown. But if you haven't seen the fall display yet, I must say they've outdone themselves. When I drove past that and I saw it, and I'd already kind of heard about it because J.R. Smith had said, "Are you okay with this?" I'm like, whatever he says, yes, I'm okay with. But when I drove by and saw that, I was just smiling ear to ear because it's so precious. And so thank you for doing that throughout the year, and thank you for the work and the creativity and the thought that you put into that. It's well deserved. I knew I wouldn't be able to get you to show up for recognition, so you're here. I'm taking advantage. Couple of events I want to share with you. The Miracle Park also kicked off their season with baseball at the Miracle Park last Saturday. I wanted to mention to you that I think it's on the 21st of October. They're actually going to be doing an evening game. So between now and then, you can check it out Saturday mornings at 10, but that'll be a fun event as well. One thing last weekend, because of one of the players' relationships with the Nashville Sounds and being like their biggest fan, their mascot, Booster, was actually at the Gallatin Miracle Park game. And so that was a huge thing for a lot of people attending and playing. It was a little scary for a couple of people playing, but they managed that very, very well, both with our local mascot and Booster. They were precious. And so that was really kind of him to come out. Understand that Booster actually lives in Williamson County, and sometimes he gets paid to make special appearances, but he wouldn't do that for our Miracle League. And so we appreciate that so very, very much. You may recall that a few weeks ago, Be Pro, Be Proud was planned to launch. Now it is happening on the 12th, this Wednesday, at Volunteer State Community College. It's at 9 a.m. And you may recall that this is an opportunity to expose people to different careers and trades. And so this is, I understand, is a semi where people can explore various career paths that don't necessarily include college. And so we're looking forward to that. Meta apparently had some role in helping fund that. And so that's why it's launching in our community, although it's going to be going to communities all over the state of Tennessee. Also want to mention that Reliant Realty is having a fall festival on the 12th from 5 till 8 p.m. I've been by there before, a little late to enjoy all the festivities, but it was a lot of fun. They had set up, open to the public, dress in Halloween if they want to, right? Yeah. Okay. On the 14th, this Saturday, never heard of this before, but it sounds really intriguing. Java Jazz and Jam Brunch Festival at Triple Creek Park Pavilion. That's from 8 until 2. I mentioned the Miracle League game. There's a chili cook-off at the American Legion. I've been to that before, too. And, oh, my goodness, I didn't know that people could create so many different concoctions of chili, and some of them were really good. And somebody had cornbread, too, so it's worth checking out. An ultimate frisbee guy. I thought this was interesting and just thought you might like to know about it. An ultimate frisbee game of the Civil Air Patrol is happening at Triple Creek Park football field. There's a big mountain bike race, and I wish I could tell you what group it was, but it's a really big race happening out at Lock 4 Park on the 15th. Cars for CASA is happening on the 15th. That's in Hendersonville, but of course it benefits our Sumner County CASA. On the 16th is the Chamber Luncheon, which I don't usually mention, but it is the Mayor's State of the City address. And I'm really grateful for those of you who are planning to attend. And then I want you to mark your calendar, because not too far from now is David Brown's birthday on the 18th. And so I believe that concludes my comments, unless I didn't mention something that somebody thinks I should have. I guess not.
I would like to make a resolution to remove 2 items from,
Okay, that, I was asking if anybody had any further comments for awareness, and so now I'm going to conclude mayor's comments, and then we'll move to the regular agenda. Now would be appropriate time if you wish to be recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to make a motion to remove item 4 and item 6 from the agenda. Item 4 because I don't know why we're even talking about that. We have a director of the Park and Rec, so I don't see why. And item 6, same thing. I don't see why there, so.
And a motion?
Remove item 4 to start from the agenda.
Item 4, is that one motion?
No, he said 4 and 6.
4 and 6, so item 4 first and item 6 after.
I would be for item 4, but not 6. So if you
That's
want
why
to separate
I do two separate motion. Motion to remove item 4 from the agenda.
I'll second that for discussion.
I have a motion and a second. Since this is the item that I put on the agenda with our HR director and Mr. Brown, I don't know how you are to entertain processes or future looking if you don't want it on the agenda to discuss it. I mean, because I'm trying to do things transparently, that means bringing it to this body, and there's a very distinct purpose in doing that. And we shouldn't be talking about the item if you're talking about getting it off the agenda, but I don't just put something on the agenda so it can be yanked off and never discussed. That is not doing the people's business in a public way.
I made
That's
a
my
motion.
comments.
There is a second.
Okay, Mr. Javant said he made a motion. There is a second. Is there any other comments on that? Okay, all in favor of the first motion to remove item 4, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, please say no.
No.
Motion fails. Item number 6, I assume, is the other motion. Have a motion. And that motion dies for lack of a second. So those items will remain on the agenda, and we will move now to item number 1 on the regular agenda. And for that, Chief Beeman is recognized. It's ordinance 02309-53, appropriating $7,268.49 for fire truck repairs.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, council. This agenda item is appropriating the funds received from insurance recoveries that was placed into our recovery account to appropriate that and transfer it to our fire truck repair line item.
Motion to send it on.
Second.
Motion by Vice Mayor Love, second by Councilman Carter. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor of moving ordinance 02309-53 on to council meeting, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. Does unanimously pass. Thank you, Chief Beeman. And well, actually, while you're standing there, he's going to visit one of the new fire trucks next week. So, and looking forward to delivery in several weeks. Item number 2 is ordinance 02310-54. For that, Bill McCord is the city planner, and I'm going to let him present the project rather than me reading through the very long description.
Yes, it is a very long description. Thank you, Bill McCord, City Planner. This next request we have is to zone some properties that were recently annexed into the city and rezone some properties that are adjacent to the property recently annexed into the city. The property comprises 45.5 acres on the south side of West Albert Gallatin Avenue and on the east side of East Camp Creek. Much of the property, as you can see on the screen, is indicated in red and/or blue, inside the yellow polygon, and that property is either in a floodway or flood zone. So about a third, roughly a third of the property is in some either floodway or flood zone. The applicant is proposing to rezone the property and zone the properties that were just annexed from a variety of zonings, R10 for the most part, and R6 to MU zoning and R6 PRD. In order to do this, they're looking to develop it as a master plan. It would be a horizontal property regime. And there's a, and I'll show you the schematic here just in a minute here. Let me go back. Okay. As far as the rezoning goes, currently what we have is on the left side of the screen, and the area in white is the area that doesn't have zoning now and will be zoned as a result of action by council. The area that is zoned R10 is kind of the orange color, and then the brown color there is currently zoned R6, and it also is a PRD. The applicant's proposal is shown in the middle figure there, which shows the majority of the property would be zoned R6 PRD, and the northerly portion would be zoned MU mixed use. The third figure there shows generally the line with that zoning scheme where the annexation line was previously located. The annexation line did not follow the creek. It was annexed in 1965, and we went through that, and it just split the property in half, but now that's been resolved. As I mentioned, the property is proposed as a horizontal property regime. It is 45 acres, and basically what you have around it is all developed properties for the most part, including properties that are developing to the west, which is the Nexus development, and a lot of phases in the Clearview Heights subdivision to the east. So this is truly one of those parcels of lands which is inside what we might call the inner loop of the bypass and Albert Gallatin that is close into the city. And so the applicant is requesting this unique development pattern using these zonings in order to achieve a more modern type of zoning to apply to properties as we've had mostly in the last 25 years. The applicant is proposing some exceptions, and those would be to building heights, and I'll get into that in just a minute, some architectural alternatives, and a buffer yard alternative. I will let you know that the Planning Commission did discuss this at length and had a discussion, presentation by the applicant, and the applicant is here tonight and may want to add something to this presentation and focus on specific questions. But the Planning Commission, after thorough review, voted 7-0 to recommend approval of this zoning change. Now, let's go back to the comprehensive plan. This was adopted, of course, by the council in September, and this is part of the general urbanized area, and general urbanized densities, the recommendations range from 5 to 15 units per acre. The applicant's proposal is 7.8 units per acre. They're proposing 355 units of various types, including detached structures, and I'll get into that. That is basically the plan that, from a bird's eye view way up in the sky. But nonetheless, this is a schematic of where the improvements will be constructed, including public roadways, a lot of open space. 54% of the property will be open space, and as I mentioned, about a third of it is in floodplain. So that makes for compatible uses to achieve open space needs, as well as a variety of recreation activities, and a potential connection to a greenway alignment, which will be built on the west side of the creek with the Nexus property. Now, as you can see here, the top of the screen is Albert Gallatin, and as you proceed southward, you get a variety of housing types, including attached 2- and 3-story apartments and townhomes, condominiums, and live-work type units. And you also have some single-family detached units in the southerly portion. And those are similar, if you're familiar with the Oxford Station and single-family. And I've got a lot of pictures here to show you, to give you an indication. This would be an oblique view looking from more southwesterly portion towards the east, northeast. So that feature right there in the bottom of the screen there, that would be East Camp Creek, which is the west boundary of the property. And you can see the extensive green space. And then you can see the urbanized type development of the various types of housing that they'll be proposing. There's also a water feature which currently exists up in the north central portion of the property. And that portion up there would be the MU zone, and then you'd have working, live-work units and a child care center up on that portion of the property. So there's a total of 355 units on the 45.5 acres. Under the proposed zoning, they could have possibly gotten as many as 424 units on the property, given that roughly a third of the property is in a floodplain, and you only get half credit for density in that sense. Under the current zoning of the property that's zoned in the city right now, there's approximately about an estimated 170 units, but that's the old Euclidean type zoning that is established in the older sections of the city, and most of the new development in the city is not following that zoning scheme. As I talked about the natural features, I now want to focus on some of the streets. The black lines are the existing street network from the adjacent street network and subdivisions. The gray lines will be the new streets that would be extended through this new development and tie into the existing streets. All the streets would be built to city standards. Hatton Track Road would also be improved up to Scott Street, which is the new street that ties into Albert Gallatin Avenue. So all these would be local streets, not collector streets. They also have some on-street parking in selected places. As I mentioned earlier, this would tie into the Greenway. The Greenway would be that red line that extends along the west side of the creek. And so this green space that they would be creating and preserving along the east bank of the creek would tie in nicely with the green space that's being preserved on the west side of the creek with the Nexus property. And it will create a linear park type of arrangement. Again, this is indicating some of the live-work units there in the red. As I mentioned, they're in the northerly portion of the site. I'll get into that. And here's some typical photographs of what they would try to achieve with their open space. So walking areas, exercise areas, dog walks, just general open space with the pond as well. The housing type units are a variety of housing type units. As I mentioned, flats, apartments, condominiums, and even detached single family. So this is a variety of types of housing you could expect. Some of it may even look like a downtown or small downtown node. And it may even serve that purposes, at least for residential purposes. Some of the green space here and the landscaping that would be provided, buffer yards. They're asking for the alternative buffer yard along the east side, which is adjacent to existing single-family homes, which is consistent with the type of buffer that they would generally be providing if it were developed under the existing zoning. So you can see the circulation network and some of the landscaping that they're proposing to do to comply with the buffer yards, in addition to internal landscaping, some of the linear parks, parklets and stuff throughout the site. And here's a schematic of the buildings, different building designs that I've already mentioned. It also includes a clubhouse there in the purple on the west side. More schematics of, because of the property kind of slopes from east to west, and this was typically what you would expect to see as far as scale of buildings throughout the width of the property. This is more detailed. I know you can't read that chart, so I'll just leave that off. This gives you an indication of building heights and setbacks and lot sizes and so forth. And the circulation pattern, again, is they're going to be tying into the existing street network and including some improvements to existing streets. There's several stubs streets that were platted years ago that they'll be tying into. And of course, these streets will be compliant with the existing design standards of the city. Here are a variety of different types of housing that could be constructed here. And so not necessarily that they will be constructing all of these, but these are samples of the types of housing that you could expect, including the single-family detached, the stacked flats, the apartment-type homes as well. A very colonial-type look in many cases. Again, here's an example of what I said that might look like a mini downtown in certain streets. There you go, more of that. So, and then they have your utility circulation systems. They've already gone to that far to show those types of improvements, even though that's a little more detailed than what's normally provided at the B&B stage. So with that, it is consistent with the comp plan. The Planning Commission did thoroughly review this, and there were some positive comments from the public. The applicant has met with the public in this area, had a community meeting. I think they would like to have the opportunity to present additional information to you. And again, the Planning Commission approved it, recommends approval 7-0.
Without opposition, is that okay with everybody? Mr. McCord, would you mention the non-residential components, because you didn't? Or if you
Yes,
did, I fell asleep.
there's live-work units, and I can't, it's one of the slides back here further. And the applicant might have better opportunity, these right here. So this is in the MU zone, would be in the MU zone portion. So the larger building would be a child care center. And then the other units would be a live-work environment. So you can have an office there and your home.
The childcare was what I thought was very compelling, and that's why I wanted you to mention. Vice Mayor Logan, did you have a question?
I had a
Mr. McCord?
couple, did you say that it was a unanimous vote at planning,
That's right.
for one thing? And also, do you know how many acres that green space would be?
It's about, it's in the report here, I think it's, let me get the exact acreage. It represents 18 acres within the floodplain. Almost 19 acres of the 45 acres is in the floodplain.
And there are playgrounds, I know there's I can see a dog park, there's
That's
a
what they're intending.
community pool. I think this is like a little city park practically in the middle of it.
I'll make a motion to send it on.
Do you not want to hear from the applicants?
Well, I was making a motion, we'll discuss some more.
Okay. Motion to send it on to council, second by Councilman Fan. With that, if some representatives of the, or a representative from the project want to come forward, we'd welcome you
If they
to.
want to say anything else.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Mayor, and thank you, members of the council. I'm joined tonight by Eric Beatty, who's with Amplio Development, Marty Cook, attorney who you know in town, and then Greg Tidwell with Smith G Architecture. My name is Andrew Walters. I'm with Catalyst Design Group, 5100 Tennessee Avenue in Nashville. Bill does such a great job, makes our job very easy to come up here because everything's really been covered. A lot of this is in some way a repeat of what he mentioned. But it is a mixed-use development, 15,000 square feet of commercial area. Daycare was mentioned. We're excited about that. Mr. James Fenton mentioned that at Planning Commission, that this is a much-needed feature of this development in this part of town to bring a daycare to this. So we're excited to do that. There is a diversity of housing options, as was covered. Answer to the question on the open space is 54% of the whole site is open space, which equates to the 24.6 acres of the land that is all open space. And again, as Bill mentioned, a lot of that is in floodplain. It is consistent with the general urban character area, 7.8 units per acre. Compact growth rather than sprawl is definitely some of the comments that we've been receiving. We had a really good neighborhood meeting. Appreciate Councilmember Carter for setting that up and participating in that. A lot of the comments from the neighborhood, and there was a gentleman that spoke, Mr. Hogan spoke during the Planning Commission. A lot of the comments really related to, just that neighborhood sort of being underserved and forgotten. And I think the general consensus was they didn't want that to happen again. And so a lot of the feedback that we got was in relation to transportation, walkability. Can we be forward-facing to that neighborhood and embracing of that and not sort of turning our back? And in a lot of ways, we feel like this development does that very well. It is a completion of some infill property, so it connects to all the public streets that were stubbed out. We're bringing sidewalk connectivity up to these streets, and again, bringing those sidewalks then to commonly held open space and public space that can then cross the creek as well. So I think there was a lot of excitement about that. Dog park, fitness stations, walking trails, all of these will be access points and accessible to the surrounding neighborhood. Let's see, just trying to go through my notes here. We are utilizing the connection to Albert Gallatin, which was obviously a big investment by the city there at Scott Drive. One of the comments that was very constructive in discussions at the Planning Commission was to provide a widened access of Hatton Track Road. And there was a lot of discussion about how do we encourage that movement of traffic as it comes into this development so that we're not impacting the neighbors and the neighborhood with additional burden of traffic. And so widening Hatton Track to really be consistent all the way to Scott to make that a very free-flowing movement in was one of the conditions that you'll see in the packet of approval at Planning Commission, and we're embracing of that and want to do that. There is a traffic study that's been submitted to engineering, and they're reviewing it. I know that's a question that comes up quite a bit in discussion. The level of service is an A to begin with and projected out at 2031. Every intersection that was studied in the project is still an A, with the exception of that Albert Gallatin and Scott Drive connection point, which goes to a B. So I think given that's an 8-year projection, that was a moderate amount of increase in traffic would be expected for this. So with that, we'll be quiet and answer questions you guys might have. So thank you.
Got one more. It may be too early, but have you all spoken with Nexus to see how they feel about connecting?
Yeah, I may let you touch on that. I know you guys have been in touch.
Hey there, this is Eric Beatty, 6401 Panorama Drive in Brentwood. We have had some preliminary discussions with them, but we're not ready to announce. We're still working through it. Okay.
That would be great.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Always good to see Mr. Cook here. How you doing, sir? I already told you that, guys, after planning, I think it's a good-looking development. I have the same concern we were brought to the planning is the traffic around on the streets. I actually I went there before the meeting to refresh. And I think we're probably going to have an issue here, and that should be addressed before we do anything else. And about sidewalks too on the other part of the neighborhood. I still think it's too dense because when I look at the numbers, you guys have 25 acres usable. Basically, you put everything on 25 acres, and the same amount of units you're going to put on 25 acres to get this amount of units on the neighborhood, it's 125 acres on the whole neighborhood. So I think it's still dense for me. I like the idea of the macro park, and I would like to see a little more here on that part, something a little less dense to kind of, go from the single-family housing to the inside of the development. So that's what I would like, but that's just my view.
Anyone else with questions or comments? I have a couple of things, if y'all don't. I had Mr. McCord mention the daycare because I found that a very compelling piece of this. But I also was very intrigued and saw the advantage of the smaller units on the rentals. Can you speak to those? And is that still what you're thinking?
So, Marty Cook, on behalf of, I represent the landowner and the developers here. Technically, because this is an HPR, it will not be rentals. These will be individually owned units throughout the development.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. We were talking about one-bedroom units, though. That's what we were talking about, and that's where I was trying to get to. I'm sorry.
Correct, but those will be for sale units.
No,
Let me, I want to correct, no, so we're still working through the business plan of that. We're going to follow market demand
Right.
on those. And
Right.
so, you know,
and yeah, I mean, we would expect any investor to. I don't know if you guys can say anything about this, but I know that there was some effort for a collaboration with a nonprofit on kind of a different model of attainable housing. Do y'all, is that still something you're still working on, or?
Yes, ma'am, it is. Thank you. Yeah, we're, as a component of this PMDP, we're super excited to announce that we're going to donate 10 lots to Habitat for Humanity for Sumner County. As you all know, it's a huge, housing affordability is a huge issue nationwide, obviously, with what's going on in the economy and rates and all that, but especially here locally as well. And so we've had multiple conversations with Habitat and the leaders and board members there, and gotten to kind of understand their mission and kind of business and how they work. And they're quite literally on the front lines combating this issue with their mission every day. So super grateful for that. Mayor, you've been, I've said it before, you continue to ring the bell on housing affordability. So I just am grateful for your leadership and encouraging and pushing us in that direction a little bit. And then Councilman Carter, obviously, from the very first time you and I ever spoke about this project, you've been a huge advocate for your district and this neighborhood. And I would dare say at the top of your priority list was some home ownership opportunities in your district. And so kudos to you. I'm super excited to partner with you and this donation to Habitat in District 5. So thank you.
And it was nice to have his input to be able to take to Planning Commission to share the positive position on there. I know this council has heard me say about, I don't know if you've heard me say, and I'm saying this because you're probably going to hear more from me about it, having spent a day at a summit in Franklin last week or the week before last about housing affordability, and then 2 half days or 2 half meetings at our TASER, which is the Advisory Commission on Intergovernmental Relations that involves all elements of government in the state of Tennessee, and it being about affordability. There was a guy from Habitat of Chattanooga, and he had this really beautiful graph. I need to get my hands on it because it was so interesting. And he was talking about how when you're talking, when the government subsidizes rentals, the difference it could make if they could find a way to help subsidize ownership, because it's so much cheaper over the term of living in a home. So it was very, very interesting. But everybody was talking about different ways. We were with the director of FHFA talking about Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac and what portals may there be in the future. What portals shall we look for so that we can help people get into homes through and where financing is a barrier. I know I mentioned that the THDA first-time home buyers is a problem here in our area because there are no affordable units that fall below the threshold of that number that they give you, that you have to buy a house below that number. So anyway, I appreciate this. I think it's very valuable. I think it's important to our workforce. And when I say our workforce, I mean the workforce of the city of Gallatin, who may work wherever they may work, and certainly the workforce for the government of the city of Gallatin, our employees, because I send birthday cards to all of our employees each year, and it always makes me sad how many people live outside of our city. Now, I know some people choose to. Many of them may have, like to have farms like the lady earlier described, but a lot of them have shared with me that they can't afford something here in Gallatin. So I think this will fill a great need, and I think you put a lot of effort into it. I really appreciate the fact that you may not live here now, but I knew you win, right?
I got green and gold in my blood, that's for sure.
Yep.
Did I hear you say there will be some units that are live-work units?
Yes, sir, that's correct. Up there on the northern end, they'll have either, we're still working on the business plan, but live above, up the 2 floors above and have a work stall below.
Retail and services below, and then they live above.
It's not just like a neighborhood you're developing. I think it's community.
Yes.
It's one of the best plans that I've seen come through here in a long time.
I was so impressed with the presentation and everything. It was really thoughtful.
Councilman Carter, I think you, did I interrupt you? I'm sorry.
No.
Okay, Councilman Carter.
Yes, ma'am. So I just want to say I am so stinking excited about the Sunset Farm development coming to District 5. It's been an absolute pleasure to work with Eric and Stephen and their team. I told them, like, the first time I ever met them, it's important for me, for the residents of District 5 to feel like they are being heard and their opinion is being valued. And I cannot say enough of how well Eric and Stephen and their team have made sure they're hearing my constituents, make sure they're valuing their opinions, make sure they're not just bringing a plan and saying, hey, this is what we're going to do. It was always, here's our plan. What can we do to make it better? I also want to point out that there was a concern that we had like on a late Thursday, and I called Eric to talk about that concern. And 2-3 days later, on a Saturday morning, bright and early, he met with me to meet with some constituents that were concerned. We sat for a few hours and talked with them about things that were going on in the development. Eric and Stephen were very open to mitigating concerns and make sure that this was something that they could buy into and that they were okay with the plan and that they felt okay. Then they were on board, and at some point their support kind of wavered, but they have been very open and honest with people in our district, and they have listened so well to what the city want. And then I also want to point out that I can't recall anybody in that community meeting saying they don't want the development. There were just questions and concerns, and Eric and his team did a wonderful job with answering those questions, hearing those concerns, and valuing the input from that meeting. So thank you to you guys.
Carter, it sure is lovely to hear a council member say, I'm so stinking excited about. So, no further questions. Are you all ready to vote?
Yes.
All in favor of moving forward to ordinance 02310-54, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, please say no. Moves forward to council unanimously. Thank you all. Item number 3 is resolution R2310-85, and this is a request to submit an application for annexation for 5 separate but adjoining parcels. And for that, Mr.
I
Horton.
need to abstain.
Here to beginning. Okay, this next item is a request by 5 different property owners to request approval by council to annex their properties into the city. It's inside the urban growth boundary, and it's located on the west side of Big Station Camp Boulevard and north of Highway 386. This is the properties that is estate lots and mini farms that is located between Sumner Station Medical Facility and the Wellington Apartments, which is to the north side of it here. It's south and east of Station Camp Creek High School. It includes 86 acres, roughly, of property that is currently obviously in the county and zoned rural residential. A small portion of one of the parcels was annexed into the city about 5 or 6 years ago and is now part of the McCain Station development. This little bitty triangle right there, and we also annexed a very small strip of the right-of-way at that time as well. So what we have are 5 property owners. This is the zoning scheme in the area right now, and to the south where the Sumner Station is located is zone PGC, and then to the east where McCain Station is located is also zone PGC. while the Wellington Apartments is zoned R6, this kind of orange color, and the red color is the MRO, is the school complex, Station Camp School Complex. So you see the arrangement of the 5 different parcels. They're roughly of all equal size. And so they just don't have any particular plan at this point about what they might want to do at some future date with the property, or at least we haven't been told. Perhaps each of the property owners has a little something different in mind. Parcel 1, of course, has direct access to Big Station Camp Boulevard, while the other parcels have access to Lower Station Camp Road. At this time, we don't believe that Lower Station Camp Road is part of their property and would not be included in the annexation, yet we need to get the legal descriptions to determine what the actual boundaries are, each of those parcels that is adjacent to Lower Station Camp Road. So
Everything else is city surrounding it.
Well, on the other side of the creek, over here is Hendersonville, and there's subdivisions that have been under construction over here in Hendersonville. So that's that green dotted line is the urban growth boundary line, and the black dotted line is the current city limit line.
Second.
Motion by Councilman Hayes, second by Councilwoman George. Opening the floor for any questions or discussion. Mr. Chivance.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't think we need to annex more land right now. I know what's going to happen. Hopefully, I'm probably wrong, but that's 87 acres. That's going to come back for probably a rezoning. And worst case scenario, we're going to have 900 more units building there. I hear all the time my constituent complaining about Station Camp, Boulevard traffic, so that's going to be even worse. So I don't think we need more land, so I will be voting no.
Anyone else with comments or questions? Okay, let's vote to move resolution R2310-85. All in favor of moving it on, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no.
No.
Passes 6-1. Moving on to item 4, which is resolution R2310-86. For that, I'm going to recognize Courtney Russell. I'll have some follow-up comments, and then we can discuss.
Good evening, Council. Courtney Russell, Human Resources Director. So a little bit of background about the resolution was that in a discussion with current Parks and Recreation Director, Mr. David Brown, he did indicate that he would be retiring in the not immediate future. Indicated the intent to retire somewhere in early 2026. One of the things that I find government in general tends to lack is succession planning. Oftentimes, we're not able to fill positions until a position is vacant. But in order to get ahead of this, and based on the pre-planned nature of not only the department and all of their programs, the fact that we have the master plan coming up even later this evening, which has been months and years in the making, and will require an additional plan adjustment in the next 2 to 3 years. We wanted to look to moving Mr. Brown to potentially an advisory position and allowing us to bring in another Parks and Recreation Director to start the planning for the future. The job description that's there is essentially the same as the Parks and Recreation Director. The intent being that until we would be able to post and fill, which could take anywhere from 3 to 9 months realistically to find someone with the qualifications that we'd be looking for to move the Parks and Rec Department to the future in the next several decades. That would allow then several months to work hand in hand with Mr. Brown before kind of taking over the helm and really taking on the planning and the transition of the department. I think that covers my points.
And I appreciate what you said about succession planning, because that really is the genesis of this. Whenever I have, conversations with department heads, especially when they've worked here for a long, long period of time, I like to talk about succession planning. You may recall not too terribly long ago, we actually made a change to the recorder and city judge position. And that was about succession planning because things have changed a lot since Ms. Kittrell was elected. And the standard now is quite different. And so we changed that so that we would be prepared for the future when that time came. With our Parks and Recreation Department, I think it's such a big department with so much happening right now between the parks plan, the 3 properties that we're looking to development, the Clearview investment, instituting the parks master plan, grants that I hope we're able to apply for in the years ahead, and being successful in those, and then administrating those. And then the fact that our park is so multifaceted, our Parks and Recreation, like a lot of places, it's just parks, ball fields and parks. And we have, a facility in the Civic Center. We have a golf course. We have the Miracle Park. We have pretty robust programming. And in a lot of places, you would see different directors for each of those sectors. But here we just have the one. And so when you've got someone that has as much institutional knowledge as Mr. Brown does, it's going to take some time to shift that. And I actually see a really beautiful opportunity for he and whomever the other person may be to work together on really visioning. And when he and I met, and then when we met with Ms. Russell, I said, think about what all you have done in your time here, and what is the next 50 years going to look like, and how can we set that up for the best possible transition. And so I think it requires an investment, but I think it's an investment that we can realize a return on as we prepare for all of these great, I've had conversations with every single one of you about what you envision for, some program you're interested in, or something that you'd like to see here, or, some of the things that you'd like to see happen. But this will give them certainly more bandwidth, a fresh perspective potentially, and a different kind of experience. And so I think it would give our parks a great opportunity, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for any of us to have, 2 leaders working together. And the way I see it working is that there would be certainly the period of time that would be a training period of time. And then I think after that training period of time, then I believe that Mr. Brown would exist in a kind of certainly be doing a job, but be in an advisory capacity so that he can just make sure that the person knows that everything, kind of a watcher and waiter and question answerer when the needs be. Because not only is it a difficult transition for our parks, it's a difficult transition for our employees. And so I think to be able to have that escort there who has been your leader for so long can be a really, like I said, unique, wonderful, and once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, all in the name of making our parks fabulous in the future. So, yes, Mr. Canal?
I had a couple of talks with Mr. Brown over the, a month or so, and then, he brought out that he would like to retire in 2026. So, finding somebody, and I think David sold himself a little short, because today we was talking and David said, well, if they find somebody, then, he should be ready to take it over. And so, David, you got a lot of knowledge. You're 40-something years. Think about when you change from football to baseball to basketball, soccer.
Infrastructure.
There's so much that he's got in his brain that it's going to take somebody a while to bring them in there to learn that business. And I've talked to some other council people here. One was Mr. Fan. And, at first somebody said something, well, we can wait till about 6 months before he's getting ready to retire. And I said, no, I think he needs to be about a year. And then another person come out and told me, well, what if we hire somebody that that just don't like our concept or wanted to go somewhere else? Anything can happen. So, and it's going to take a while to find the right person, and then plus get them in there and then make sure that they're comfortable with the job. But, we got to think of what if. So, the other time frame that I was told, if you start it now, then that gives us a couple of years to settle into that.
Well, and I'm not thinking starting it now, because look, it's October.
Well, I'm not saying just start it now, but start heading in that direction.
Next year.
But to point out that Mr. Brown, he wants to retire in June 30th, 2026. So what we're talking about, he will stay here on payroll till June 2026, correct?
Well, we have discrepancy because we met and he said January. I didn't hear that June date until today.
Correct, same.
So, we actually had a meeting and documented and signed off on it.
And that is
so-
why the resolution is
Well, I mean, the
mentions
thing
that it
that
would
we
be
could
funded
change,
through
I mean-
January of 2026.
I mean,
but-
January to June, that's not but something of several more months for somebody that's been here, 40-something years. So, if David, I didn't hear anything about January, but David come to me and told me June 30th, 2026 is when he wants to retire. And he's done so much for this city that I don't see a few months being a problem. That's just my opinion.
If I can interject as a new department head who's been here just under 6 months, I mean, I can tell you that I'm still finding my footing. And my department does not have 4 decades of institutional knowledge to transfer.
Or a bunch of employees.
Right, or 100
property
some
all
odd-
over the
right.
city or.
4 different programs. So for me, it just became, there's a lot that, especially when someone has been here for as long as Mr. Brown has been here, there are things that even if he wrote down every step, he's not going to hit all of those notes that someone else would need to know, because it's just inherent in what he does anymore. So transferring that knowledge is really about having someone shadow and then being able to kind of take on those processes and make them their own, again, for the future and for continuity of service for the citizens so that we don't drop any of the balls that are in the air.
Well, and having a leader for that period of time is not just similar to what we had at GPU, but in that case, there was a person that had been there almost as long as that person, and so it's a little different. But it's rare to have somebody in a role that big and that important for that period of time, and being able to transition, like I said, it's not just going to be difficult for our parks and our citizens, but for our employees. And so I think, we can make this really be a great thing.
I think I'm confused.
Okay?
So the new hire person, I'm confused on what they're doing at first. Is David advising, or is he continuing to be the director?
So until there is, the thought process was that having this position gives us a placeholder. So that while David is still in the director position, we could then advertise for the director position. Once we find a suitable candidate and are able to hire someone into that position, Mr. Brown would become the advising director for the time period until there is the transition that he's chosen on the date. So it would allow, he would remain in the director capacity until we were able to hire someone else, which could be 3, 6, 9 months realistically. And then would move into the advising role to work tandem with someone and then kind of step back into a supportive and advising role.
Are we going to start doing that with every department?
No, I don't. I mean,
Not every department is as large and as pre-planned, again. So the parks departments and programs are already planned out for 2 to 3 years.
yeah, and it's so much to happen between the parks plan, the programming goals, the growth of our area, the amenities that people want, the opportunities that people want. Mr. Phantom, sorry.
We're going to have a plan when these transitions take place. And the other is, are we going to purchase another vehicle? Is this new employee going to have transportation from the city, or are they going to furnish their own?
I'm not planning, that would probably be the next budget cycle for us to determine, but we're actually looking at take-home vehicle policies here shortly. And then I believe the answer to your first question would be in understanding with the processes. And that would be HR, me, Mr. Brown, new person, where we would develop a timeline that would be our goals to process, i.e. this person is trained by this date, this person transitions in this date, that kind of thing. With benchmarks like we do with new employees.
But you're still, I think the answer to your question is yes, he's going to be a department head when he comes on, correct?
Right.
So he's going to get paid like a department head. So you're going
Right.
to have 2 full-time department heads running that department. So yes, he will have a vehicle. That's the answer to the question.
Well, but
So we're adding a department head.
There is.
Based on the pay and everything else, yes, we are adding another department head.
Financially, yes.
Financially.
That would be the
Financially
impact.
and
Yes.
truck.
Financially.
But
Now,
again, I
my
know that's a,
question now would
okay,
be-
lem-
Go ahead.
that's a heavy lift, I understand, but like I said from the beginning, I think it's worth it because we will see a return in that investment that makes that value, that puts that value there.
I kind of
Okay,
agree.
let's not debate yet, and Mr. Javant's going to be recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. I worked in private business, so when there's too many cooks in the kitchen, that never works. That's confusing for everybody. That means employees going to be confused, who's going to do what. And my first question is, if our director of park doesn't want that job as an advisor, because technically he's a director of park, so we have to change him from his director of park to the new job. So how we do that technically? Because we're going to change his job qualification. For now, he's a director of park. So here, I think we have an issue already there. I understand the continuation, and I agree with that, but Mr. Brown, you should ask for a raise, because of what I hear, if tomorrow he leaves, that means the department's not going to crumble. He had 3 assistants from each branch. I think he's probably using his assistants correctly. I never heard anything against it. It's a lot of money, and we're creating another director position. So again, on the technicality, we're going to change him. We're going to remove him from his position at park director to the new position created there. How can we do that legally? That means if he doesn't want it, what are we going to do?
I think it's a path, I mean, that's what we discussed. That's a path to make sure that everything is taken care of as it needs to be, and.
And I don't think we need 2.5 years
Okay,
or
let me-
even 2 years.
You ask, I'm answering the question. I don't know how long the period of time is going to be, and we have to have him in the advising role. His duties will change, but his pay doesn't change. His time here will not change. His benefits won't be affected. All of those things that help him make a good transition, but also help us have a person in place that's ready to run, I also see some opportunity there, because I know that in just day-to-day activity, just in getting the parks plan done, somebody being able to kind of focus on big picture plans while someone else is doing management for this critical juncture in our park's future could be really beneficial. And I think that's something that Mr. Brown is great at.
Oh, can I?
Okay.
Oh, all right.
Back to you.
Question, I mean, if we do hire somebody, obviously we're going to hire somebody that has some experience, correct?
That would be the hope, yes.
Yeah. So obviously he's going to have park and recreation experience,
Correct.
correct? And,
But maybe not Gallatin.
and I don't always agree with what Pascal says a lot, but to me, and I even said this to the mayor today, brought this up, but I think you're going to have, you know, when you start doing this and you're going to have 2 of them there, it's going to create a lot of friction with the employees.
I think there's the
think you
potential
will.
for confusion, but that's why I think that
I think
there's
it's
the
going
need for
to.
the tandem.
If you want to do this, do it 6 months before he retires. Do it 8 months before he retires. Don't do it 2 years and so many months. And y'all keep talking about, well, yeah, it's going to take time to hire somebody. It might take a few months. It might take a month.
Well,
This
it would
person's
be
going to
posted
have
for a minimum of a
experience when they
month.
come in here.
Are you, Craig, are you saying like hire the person in as an assistant director and still leave David as the director and let David call the shots until David is ready to go?
I don't think that would be a good process, because.
No, I don't, he's asking me a question. Can I answer him, please? No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that we should not do this, period.
Fran?
I'm just making a suggestion. Whoever this is that comes in, I don't think we need to throw them in the fire. I think they need to do it in departments or sections. David can't tell this guy everything he knows at one time. We got a big park system. Let's just say start with a golf course. Let the guy be there a while. Let David advise him, and then move on. When I was in high school, I learned one thing from Kroger's. When they were training a new manager, he worked in each department for 8 weeks before he became assistant manager, and he learned how to do the meat department. It might have been 12 weeks. I think it was 8. But
Well, I think that kind of theory is a great training plan and could certainly be executed in that way, because they do have to have exposure to all those areas. And these are all things that he's done
going to be
organically.
is who's going to judge when he's got the golf course part down and it's time for him to move on to another section.
Exactly.
Well, I would think that person would be a professional enough to say, okay, I think I've got this grasped and we can move forward.
That's if we hire somebody that's actually run a parks facility. Well, we got somebody that's come out of college and knows everything out of a book, but he still has not had boots on the
It does
ground.
require experience.
A minimum qualification, so I mean,
Does
somebody
re-
fresh
it-
out of college won't meet
Right,
those
it requ-
minimum qualifications.
Yeah, it
of
requires
5 years
experience.
of supervisory experience.
Yeah.
Do we not have anybody in the Parks Department right now that can be being mentored and in mind?
I think that all of our assistant directors within the Parks Department, at least the ones that I've spoken to, don't necessarily feel as though they're ready to take on that role yet. Now, there may be some who can be mentored over that time.
But they've got 3 years.
Right. Well, yeah, just over 2 at this point. But is it possible? Yes. But do they have the qualifications necessary to meet that? I know at least one of our assistant directors is fairly new to that position. There are several others who really have absolutely no interest in taking over the entire department. They like their niche. To address Councilman Hayes, it would be a minimum of 3 months, if you think realistically about the fact that it would need to be posted for at least a month, if not 2. And then there would be the interview process and all of that. So at our bare minimum, we're looking at a 3-month process to even choose a candidate.
I get that. That's why I said maybe a year, 8 months, something
Right.
like
I
that
mean,
to do that.
Let me give you just a little context. I mean, I've been here now almost 9 years. We've been talking about succession planning for a long time. I was being very unsuccessful in kind of getting like future plans for, not, because I didn't want to press Mr. Brown about when he wanted to retire, but I need to make sure that this is our job, to make sure that this city is prepared for the future. And so in discussing that and batting about different scenarios and talking with Ms. Russell, this is what we came to as an agreeable option that set a plan in place for the future of our park system that benefits our citizens, pays, I think, good, strong, well-deserved respect to Mr. Brown for his years of service, yet prepares us for the next generation of leadership.
I just think if we've got 3 years, we should be trying to promote from within.
Okay, Mr. Chavons?
I agree with that, but again, talking about 3 months, 3 months process to find a new director, probably 3 months to shadow to make sure, he has the ins and outs, but again, we are creating a new job there. I read the title, it's Park and Rec Advising Director position. So that means we're going to remove our Park and Rec Director to put it on that position. So first, I don't see how we can do that just like that if he doesn't want the position again. And I think we should ask him, but I would be okay to do something like that 3 months before to put someone shadowing him. He can be called assistant director or director second or whatever. At that point, I would not have an issue, but starting almost 3 years before, 2.5 years before, that's $300,000. That's a good intern job right there. I want that job.
Well,
Seriously.
I think at the least we would have someone for 2 years. And I don't necessarily love having to do that way, but I think that's what we're getting to so that we can have a plan and make sure our parks are provided for.
That's a
Had
good
a lot of asks, a lot of questions, and I think this is a path forward, Mr. Pham.
I think it's a good idea to let David and whoever train them. But does this position go away once they're trained and?
The advising does, yes, yes. It doesn't still exist once he retires, so.
Correct, that's why in the
we have
resolution,
a
it
vehicle.
states temporarily
Not
funded through.
necessarily.
2 years, it's an expensive training on the job.
Yes. I
It's a
think
very big
well-worth
job
the
to be trained
investment.
for.
Very big job to be trained for, exactly.
And if we backward plan from what you were saying, is 3 months of cross-training. So add on to that 3 months of search and to hire, so that's at least 6 months. We're looking at about a year ahead of time. This is not to be implemented tomorrow necessarily, you know, it could be
I wish-
3-6
The
months
mayor,
from now.
the mayor just said 2 years. So she want that candidate in a position for 2 years. So 2 years, it's
She said we could
soon.
possibly.
It's
I
soon.
said at the longest, that's what that would be. I can't remember how long it took us to go through the fire chief hiring process when we hired Mr. Chief Beaman. I mean, it was quite lengthy. And then the time before when we hired a fire chief, it was quite lengthy. I mean, we went through 2 different recruitment processes because the first candidate wound up turning it down, and we reopened it, and it was open for several more months before we hired the ultimate candidate that was Chief Beaman's predecessor. So,
Okay, we advertise this job and we don't find who we want.
advertise
We
again.
change the rules. Somebody coming out of college that's sharp, that David trains, they may have some new and innovative ideas because they're coming out of college. They're going to be up to date on what the trends are. Is that something we can look at if we don't find that right person?
Well, and again, this position doesn't become, the lateral transition doesn't happen for Mr. Brown until we find someone to go into that spot. But yet, at that point, if we find that we are not getting candidates that we feel are qualified under the current Parks and Rec Director position, we can adjust that description. We can adjust what we're looking for and allow for things like.
How would it take to adjust qualifications if we had to?
Well,
resort to
I
that?
would not be supportive of adjusting the qualifications. If you'll recall, that's kind of what we went through with the fire chief hiring. You know, at some point, we're insulting every member of a department when we lower the qualifications below the people who are already there working and have likely been there for a long period of time. And so I don't believe that there's not someone that can meet the qualifications that would love to come to work for Gallatin.
Question is, what if it does happen? Where do we turn?
Well, then we would address that. But I think we actually did do that, I think, with the fire chief position because we were requiring an executive fire officer certification, and then it came to our awareness that there were, some ridiculously low number of those people in the entire United States. So we did. So that was an example of one thing we did. But the qualifications, as you see, are not crazy. We're not asking for a doctorate in physical education or something like that. Mr. Javance?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm again for the inside. I think as an organization, we need to show the employees that they can be promoted from inside. And if I follow what you say, you know, we have 3 assistants, maybe they're not ready, but why don't we go to our assistant, poke them, ask them if that's something they would like to do, and we have 2.5 years to groom them. And they, for me, are the best one to be there because they already know the system. And 2.5 years, I think, if we put the time and effort, and I'm pretty sure Mr. Brown will do that, we can have a great park and rec who's already there, who knows everything, and, you know, we're going to save $300,000 of taxpayer money.
I am generally of the same mindset as you, which is why I've had conversations with each of those people. At this time, at least There's one who's absolutely not interested, one who is brand new, and one who potentially could, and that person said they weren't necessarily interested at this time. So those are conversations that I have had, but the position would still be posted internally. So if there is an internal candidate who would like to work towards that, they wouldn't be disqualified at all.
They have been Parks employees for long periods of
Right.
time, so the opportunities have been there to pursue education and certifications and leadership and the things that you would think that, someone that was on that career path, which, as we've seen, I'll mention the fire department. A lot of people just don't want that, and that's fine. That's great.
I mean, you can ask most of the department heads when they've talked to me about potentially leaving. My first question is there someone else in your department that is ready to take over or wants to take over?
Now, I always ask that question, Mr. Brown, and the answer I already got was a person who is already retired, that wound up retiring before he did. So, it's about making sure that we're good. And our parks have our greatest opportunity, and I feel like they're worth investing in. So.
I think that's going to create issues, that's going to create frictions in the department because, again, we're going to have we're going to have two people with the same duties, we're going to be there, and that can't work.
Well, we will share with you the memo that we all signed off on after we met because we did kind of lay out how we saw that transitioning. And to think that there is always friction within a department when a new leader comes in. The only time there's not is when the previous leader has been just terrible. And then everybody's glad to get a new leader. But whenever there's a leader that's well-loved, there is going to be tension and friction. And I think this is one of those instances where transitioning in this manner can really, really smooth the path for the employees. But this is my opinion. I don't think we have a motion and a second.
I'll take a motion. I'll make a motion to go forward to the council.
Okay, motion by Councilwoman George, second by Councilman Carter. We have discussed a lot. Okay?
I still would like to get the input of legal on that because, again, for me, we're creating a new position. We're going to remove the Park and Rec director from his position, was approved by the council, was voted on. If I remember, I didn't read anything in the charter who said that we can do that. The only way I see who could do it is to fire him and reinstate him on the position because I don't think we can remove.
Not removing, we're transitioning.
It would be a lateral transfer.
But it's a new position.
Right,
So-
it's still a lateral transfer
But
of
again,
a newly
if-
funded position.
Well,
if
by
he doesn't-
resolution, you are creating something.
If he doesn't
and
accept the
doing
position, what are we doing?
I think the resolution is creating the opportunity for it to
It-
transition.
right.
Ms. Hi, McCauley's reaching for the microphone.
I have not had in-depth conversations with the mayor or Ms. Russell on this, but I feel certain that we can, if this moves on to council next week, that in a week's time, I can ensure that everything is legal about this.
My only thing is, David has pointed out he wants to retire, and he deserves that. But I still feel that we got to have somebody in place to train into that position or into the way we do things in Gallatin, to familiarize themselves with our facilities and what all we've got to offer. My first thing was at least a year of somebody underneath David, and then I heard 2 years it might take. I'm fine with whatever time frame we choose on this council, but I know we need to be heading down that path.
I can understand the training, but two and a half years? I mean,
Yeah.
we're hiring somebody intelligent that's got some experience in education. We're not.
Okay, it's October, the date that I came in here with, because the date we agreed to was January of '26. We're not planning on posting this till next year. That puts us probably mid-year getting somebody here. That at that point is a year and a half, but if it takes us longer, it takes us longer. I also, I've said everything I'm going to say about it. I mean, I know that,
Well, you said, tell me that again. You said, when are you talking about posting the job?
not till after the first of the year at the very soonest.
Then if it takes 4 to 6 months to find somebody, then you said
Well,
we're
and-
down to a year and a half.
Yeah, that takes it down to a year and a half if you're looking at it by the date that I had. But,
But again, in original discussions, it was January, and if we're looking at June, then I understand the hesitation on an additional 6 months. And so maybe that pushes back exactly when we start the search, but.
anyway, we've discussed it. A lot of people have said the same thing over and over, including me. Motion and a second. All y'all ready to vote? Okay,
Wait 1 second, Paige. Are we voting also on the discrepancy between January 2026 or June 2026? Because I want to hold for what David said on June 2026.
we are voting to move this forward to council.
I'm fine
We're
with
not
that.
voting on anything
Okay.
until it goes
All
to
right.
council, so. So motion to move it on to council. It's resolution, R2310-86. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no.
No.
Okay, I think it was 4 yeses and 3 noes.
Roll call, please.
Roll call. Vice Mayor Love,
No.
Councilman Carter,
Yes.
Councilman Fan,
Yeah.
Councilman Fennell,
Yes.
Councilwoman George,
Yes.
Councilman Hayes,
No.
and Councilman Javance.
No.
There we have four, yes, ma'am.
Heard well. Okay, we will move that on to council, and I'm sure we will discuss again between now and then with Mr. Brown and Ms. Russell. Okay, do y'all want to take a recess? It is 7:30, and I can use a quick bathroom break,
No.
so I want to take a recess. Let's take a 5-minute recess. We will reconvene. Actually, let's make it a 8-minute recess, and we will reconvene at 7:35. Okay, we're going to call this meeting back to order, and we are ready for item number 5, which is Resolution R2310-87. And for that, Jennifer Lefevre, our Chief Information Officer.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. I'm Jennifer Lefevre, CIO. The resolution before you is to formalize the request I made of you last week to apply for a grant. That grant deadline was today, and I did apply for it. So this resolution is just to formalize that process. And I would recommend your approval.
Motion to move?
Second.
Motion by Councilman Javant, second by Councilman Fennell. Remember that she mentioned last week this would be with funds already budgeted. That makes it
For a 10% match.
kind of a no-brainer. Any questions? Okay, all those in favor of moving forward Resolution 2310-87, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Does pass unanimously. Item number 6 is James Fenton, Executive Director of the Economic Development Agency, about the ask for city-owned planned business park.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. The top priority for 4 years of the Economic Development Agency's strategic plans, which you have seen, is to purchase land for a planned business, obtain city-owned land for a planned business park. This year, we had TVA that led our strategic planning session, and they started out with a 20-minute presentation on how important publicly owned land is. And the focus on publicly owned land is one of the leading factors that has kept Tennessee in one of the top 5 states to do business over the last decade. And as example, I've laid on your desk a shortened list of cities and counties that own land and the acreage. You can look at that list from Clarksville on down. There are another 24 communities that own land. I just didn't put them all on that list for you. And as a testament to the effectiveness of public-owned land, we don't have to look anywhere outside of Gallatin. Phase 2 of our industrial center is a prime example of what happens when Gallatin owns land. Let me step back for just a bit. When I got here, it started in 2012, there had been a steady but slow progress in attracting companies. That was because there was no place to put them. My predecessor had landed in North American headquarters on the last parcel available in Phase 1 of our industrial center. And through his work and supportive council, I had 204 acres to promote and a state industrial access grant to put a road in when I began. And through that investment, we have attracted American Colors, Archer Evoke Data, Beretta USA, Mohawk Fabrics, Axum, J.L. Billet, and Extreme Precision. And additionally, the purchase of that land allowed us access to the property where we were able to land Meta. So that has brought in over $1 billion in capital investment and hundreds of jobs. It's also worth noting that when we own the land, it allows us to be selective about who's going to go into that planned business park. And we can ensure that companies have good paying jobs and have a negative impact on the community. I've explained the need for publicly owned land. Let's look what it means for the city. If you look at the 2 pages of real and personal property assessments I placed in front of you, it's clear that industrial and commercial properties per parcel contribute 6.5 times more per parcel than residential. That means this acreage has the ability to collect multiple times the revenue for the city and the county than it would as residential. And this is based, of course, on numbers you have according to county assessors. We do need to openly examine the fiscal realities. According to Oakdale Municipal Advisors, the company used to go to the bond market for the city, bonding out this amount on a 20-year amortization would cost right around $1.6 million annually. An SIA grant would be expected to pay for the connector to Highway 109, and that access will means there will be minimal traffic that gets put on Dobbins Pike. And to address Ms. Gregg's concern, the plan would be to make any access to Dobbins Pike be for emergency use only. When we mention some of the companies we have attracted, like Beretta, Evoke, and Meta, we are on a level playing field across the United States with any community, and that's with site consultants in particular. This year alone, there were more than 56 RFIs, requests for information, consultants looking for a place to put a company, that we were not able to respond to simply because we didn't have land. I currently have 3 businesses that would be building tomorrow if we had this property. 2 of them are existing industries here in Gallatin that need to expand. One is another company that would like to put up about a 200,000 square foot facility. I've been working with him for 4 years to try to find a place for them. All told, they would probably purchase 40 to 50 acres. Now, our asking price for this property will be what we paid for it, what interest we've paid on a bond, and also any of the funds that we might put into that as far as infrastructure. And I'm envisioning right now that the cost will be run somewhere $115,000 an acre. And that would be $4 to $5 million that would be brought into the community. So with that, I'm open for questions.
You said.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry.
No, so I think that what we're looking at here is two different questions, and I met with Mr. Mudd and Mr. Fenton some time ago, and realizing that when this was approved for residential many years ago, a lot of things have changed since then. And so I did think it was worth them coming back to you and asking about, would you look at an industrial plan? Does that make more sense now with all the housing that's been built here? Particularly if you look at that property, and what I was looking at is there's a wooded area that would be a great buffer to those properties on Dobbins Pike. And then I said, put all the main traffic out onto 109, and that actually becomes much less of an impact than a residential development would. And so that was kind of my conversation. As far as the purchasing of it, I mean, truthfully, I've always been challenged with government competing against private investors. It's always made me uncomfortable. I think we can cite so many successes where, privately owned investors create just as many great opportunities. I would venture to guess that the lion's share of that number shown on the property tax assessment is from, private developments of industrial property. Also think that, back when the city of Gallatin bought the land for the business park, it was kind of a different place. I mean, Tennessee was a different place. Certainly Gallatin was a different place in that nobody really knew we existed, and not everybody and their brother wanted to move to Tennessee, and we weren't as desirable. And then, now I think the problem is made worse because we have a workforce shortage. And so I worry about, we always talk about this, but I always worry about, cannibalizing our existing employers. And certainly I do want to bring in great jobs, high-paying jobs. Mr. Fenton and I have been saying for several years, we want large capital investment, small number of employees, but really well-paid employees. And I think that's what we've done. But, at the same time that we're talking about putting this amount of debt on the books for the city, because I do think the infrastructure will be very costly. You'll recall there's a railroad bridge and all that stuff. Doesn't have utility infrastructure. We would have to build that.
SIA grant would take care of the bridge.
But is the SIA grant guaranteed? I mean, how do you get that guaranteed?
We have an idea whether or not the city would go ahead and consider purchasing it before I can go to them and talk with them. And I'd be glad to do that. If this body moves us forward, be glad to have that conversation. And I think we also need to address the fact that the low unemployment numbers are not a detriment to recruiting anymore, Mayor. That's
Okay, well, and then let me continue what I was saying. And you look around at some of the private investment that's been made recently, I think about, what Mr. Gregory has built. I think about that Aero Business Park. Some of y'all were there for the ribbon cutting not too long ago. And then there's the big development on, I guess it was Mr. Haynes's property with all the industrial property there that's happening on Airport Road. So like I said, this is just a core issue of mine, that I have a challenge with government competing against the private sector. I do see a place for that, particularly when you have high unemployment or when you are an unknown entity desperate for investment. And at one time, Gallatin was pretty much that. And I think that investment has paid off and paid off well. But I just worry about the costs that we're looking at on this property once you do the cost of the property and the cost of the improvements that's going to require, and then the cost that we would then have to pass on to the users. That's a lot of debt for us to put on our books. And I don't want to jeopardize our bond ratings either. There will be, you all are well aware of all the needs that we have within our community. Vice Mayor Love, go now, I'm sorry.
Well, one of my questions was for you to reiterate on that no traffic would be coming out of the Dobbins Pike. Is that what you said?
Yes, the intent would be for any exit on the Dobbins Pike would just be for emergency vehicles.
And right now, it's still considered the Meadows, which we've approved a huge amount of homes.
Roughly 1,200, yes.
And so what's that seems like the amount of traffic would be a whole lot more with the homes than it would with this. Is this light industry that we're talking about?
This would be a planned business park which has elevated architecture and much more restriction on what can go in there.
And and that we, of course, the city would be purchasing that land, but as businesses come in, they would purchase the land from us and it would be repaid that way. Is that-
Yes, we would
that's
be
what
able to
I was
recoup our investment, yes.
So really, if we get it filled, we're not out any money, is that
But I
right?
think if you get it filled is the key thing, and right now, we're looking at paying $50,000 an acre with no infrastructure, and then there is land out there for sale that is $50,000 an acre with infrastructure. I worry about us getting in a mess. I also
No.
worry in the current interest rate environment, right? And, investments that people may be willing or not willing to make.
There's no land out there for $50,000 with industrial land that has.
Oh, yeah, maybe not with zoning, but this land doesn't have that zoning either. So, I think that is something else that this,
There's not $50,000 an acre land out there right now.
it's residentially zoned property that we are considering for a use that would make sense.
And it has railroads, from what I understand, too, which is a big plus.
We have a mile of railroad frontage, which would allow for siding and bring a user in that uses.
That's something that I don't know of other places that would have, Steve.
Would be a great one.
Japan.
I've got actually 4 questions. The company that's coming in, one, how many anticipated employees will they employ?
Again, 2 of the companies are expansions from companies that are here in Gallatin already that need to expand. And then we've got a company that would probably bring about 90 employees, but they're in the area right now, so it wouldn't, they would most likely bring a vast majority of those.
When you say
with them.
bring, is that, we got people coming in, but are we gonna have jobs for them, I guess is what, is this something that somebody moved from whatever state?
Well, I have a visit this month from a company out of state out west that is going to be a supplier to one of our local businesses, and they want to build a facility here also. So that would be the 4th one, and that would be hiring people from the area, yeah.
Okay, here's my concern. The original business park off on Airport Road took years to fill up. It sat there with a lot of vacant land for many years. Now, I'm not saying that will happen here because we're in such a growth pattern.
Now, that's an industrial park, right?
Yeah.
Well, it wasn't originally the city.
Yeah, the city bought that originally, yes.
Yeah.
It's considered industrial park.
Right,
versus a business park.
Yeah. Okay, what percentage will we fill of that land in the beginning that that's pretty much committed?
Again, I could 40 to 50 acres immediately. I mean, with the companies that are looking at us.
What kind of dent will that put in our debt?
Well, that would certainly cover 3 or 4 years' worth of payment and allow us to continue to market the park and sell it.
Just don't think this, because I don't know the period of time for the improvements that are needed too before it would be available. You said you had 4 questions, you've asked 2.
Well, I kind of included one of them in there. My biggest concern is getting it filled up and the city not being burdened with debt. And that would be the only holdup I had, that the city starts getting stressed.
And that was part of the conversations when they purchased the extra 204 acres. And that was a close vote, but as we've discussed here tonight, well over $1 billion worth of investments and hundreds of jobs that have resulted in that investment.
What size, will our tracks, I'm sure there'll be different tracks, but there'll be from 1 acre to 10 acres to whatever?
We haven't gone that far yet to start designing, no. It's flexible, obviously. We can make it whatever is effective.
Thoughts?
Thank you, Mayor. I have to agree with you. I have concern about putting that amount of debt on the city right now. The purchase price, 19.3, plus the infrastructure, because there's nothing there. And if I remember well the conversation with you, James, I'm paraphrasing. You told me at one point that industry will come if everything was ready for there. So that means we're going to have to get this acreage ready with infrastructure, water, sewer, electricity, roads. So the revenue, they're not going to come tomorrow, but the interest we're going to pay on the money we're going to have to borrow, because we're going to have to borrow money. I don't think we have $19.3 million laying there to buy the land. And I look today, the 10 years bond were at 4.65%. So that's $5 million on 10 years just in interest. So that's a lot of money to recoup. And again, I'm looking at, like, if I was spending my money, I would not do that if that was my money, because I can't gamble 19.3 plus, it's probably going to cost us, I don't know, on top of my head, probably $10 million to get the site ready, probably even more. But even, gamble $30 million on maybe we're going to have somebody come here. And again, like Steve said, how long it's going to take us to build it. So that's not the gamble I'm ready to take. That's too much money, too much money.
We don't have to sell it back to them at 50,000. We can raise the
It
price
would be,
of it.
at increased, like I said, probably 100 to 115,000 is the price. Right now, we have land here in Gallatin, industrial land that's going for 150. We've had $225,000 asking price per acre here. And if you look across this county and you look down in Wilson County, it's well in excess of $100,000 an acre is what the land is going for.
And that railroad, how far does that go?
Yeah, well, that's a CSX main line.
Okay.
So it's a main line. That's the one that stops you every time you come try to
Okay.
drive through town
Right.
here.
Yeah.
That's why, because it has that long frontage, we'll be able to build a spur, and they would be able to use that to
It would be a
service.
mess if it's a residential development.
I would think that the neighbors would rather it be industrial over there than residential.
Well, like planned business park,
And,
please,
and,
it's a little
and
lighter
I
than
think if it was built out right, you could really buffer it and you'd really not really know that it was back there. I think that's a good idea. I think we need more industrial. But however, I agree with what Councilman Fan had to say. For this much investment, I would want a good chunk of my money coming back right off the bat, and not leave us holding a bag to speculate on at this day and time.
It's concerning to me that there's going to be more funding needed than the cost of the land.
Now, if we was sitting on a lot of money in reserve, the city, then it wouldn't really bother me speculating on it. But I'd want to know that we got some big fish on the hook to take a lot of this financial burden off of our shoulders right instantly.
But again, how long it's going to take us to get that land ready if we buy it? That's another point. If that takes us 2 years to get ready, because again, we all see what's going on. We can find, if you have stuff to do, you can find anybody to work right now. They all stuck somewhere. So that's going to bring the infrastructure back there. That's going to take a lot of time. Plus, again, the CSX Railroad, there's a grant. If you don't get the grant, what we do? We have to pay for a bridge. That's even more money. There is not enough information to, I would be okay to vote for something like that if I had a real business plan who show me numbers and how much we're going to spend and how much we're going to get, because I don't want to put the taxpayer money on the hook for 100 jobs to start.
Another, I did not mention, I mentioned the two projects on Airport Road, but I failed to mention the one that's happening in Nexus.
Yeah.
The thing that I fear is that the cost is going to go way beyond the cost of the land, and that it's going to take us a long period of time, and the economic conditions don't improve. And and we wind up with a whole lot of debt with no return. And I get, that that's an economic development goal and initiative, but I feel like that's where there's always been a kind of a divide between the Economic Development Board and what their vision is and what really makes sense for the city at this particular time. So like I said, I really thought the idea of getting it zoned industrial was very compelling and well worth the exploration. I'm just not sure the private sector wouldn't be more nimble, more successful, and more expedient than the government can be. Mr. Fan?
This is just a suggestion, maybe approach the seller of the land to give us an option to buy the property as it's developed, or you have a commitment. We could take a portion, develop it, let's say for the one.
We would, in order for us to obtain the SIA grant, we would have to have purchased it, owned it, or at least have an option on the entire parcel. It wouldn't work to have a
That
piece.
seems like it's something that could be worked out. I don't see us spending a bunch of money until the development at least starts and the infrastructure is going in, because let's say it took 2 years, and we're strapped for 2 years. And we don't have anything on there bringing in revenue.
I think planning it would take a year.
East.
I'm planning about 15 minutes, you give me a piece of paper.
Yeah, I'm not investing my money with your plan. Anyone else? What's the will of this body at this point? I mean, do you want to move it on to council, or?
Want to at least get an appraisal, see what we're paying for?
No, I make a motion that we move it on to council.
Second.
Motion by Councilwoman George, second by Councilman Carter. I would go back to what I said first. I think we're looking at two different potential considerations. One is potential rezoning. Is the property owner potentially interested in a rezoning if the city were not to buy it? And then the second question would be, does the city want to buy it? I have fear of that.
Paige, I agree with you. I mean, I would personally like to see it zoned industrial, but I just don't really feel comfortable in us purchasing it.
Lift for our city, especially in a tough environment. It's a whole lot of money. We've never taken out a bond for that amount, but one for utilities.
It's a huge gamble. And with the economy right now, I don't think it's time to take that gamble.
Can we, I guess what you're at, I heard you say appraisal. I guess that would be the first step we'd have to do. Do we need to include that in the resolution for the council for next week if it goes on?
I think first business would be for us to have our own appraisal done.
Yeah.
There is an appraisal that came with it. It's 1 year and 1 month old, and that came in as is $23,325,000. But I think it's appropriate that we get our own.
Well, and I think
Have that
an
excuse me.
appraisal will take some period of time, and I think that, like, if you do move it forward to council, I would say the next logical step would be with the property owner to see is there interest in rezoning it, but the city not buying it. Are they open to that? And then I think another key piece, beyond, even more so than the appraisal, would be the infrastructure cost. Because we know what they're asking for the land, we don't know the infrastructure cost.
Yep.
And what the SIA program's even doing these days. I don't know what I know they did our road out here, but that was just like nothing compared to what this ask is gonna be. This is gonna be a whole lot of millions.
I think we
About
need some
$2.5
costs,
million for the road.
before we make a final vote. Maybe even look at purchasing half of it with an option. There's lots of ways we can look at it, but if we've got commitments already, I think there's a possibility we could do something like half with an option purchase later.
Steve, I did talk to Mr. Mudd today about wondering if he'd entertain anything like what you're just saying right there. And Mr. Mudd automatically jumped up and said, I'm 70 years old. He really don't want to stretch it out. I think he wants to sell it all as one. I mean, that would be a great scenario if we could take control of that property and sell some off as it needed to be. And I think it'd be a win-win for the community, us, doing something like that, but I just don't think he's,
I think,
Sorry, ma'am, I didn't mean.
I think particularly with potentially interested parties, that there needs to be some consideration as that being a private sector opportunity, because I know that kind of, there's one school of thought in economic development that you own the land and you control it as a government. That's always made me uncomfortable. But there's another school of thought that a big role in economic development is to concierge those businesses interested in investing in your community. And so I bring that to light. Mr. Javant's wanted to say something.
Yeah, Sean, I don't think we should be on a real estate business. That means buying land to resell it to, again, it's money gamble with taxpayer money. I would be okay to talk again about it, but like I say, it's numbers. It's not my money, it's money of everybody in the city. So I want to know how much it's going to cost, not the land, because the land is easy. It's the fixed cost. We know how much he wants. We know how much it's going to cost. But I want to know what's going to be the cost to prep the land, bringing the infrastructure in, the CSX railroad pass, all that before talking about it, because I'm not going to vote on something like that. Even $19.3 million, I'm not ready to put the city in that kind of debt. I agree with you, Mayor. It's not the time. The economy, we don't know what's going to be next year. So,
Mr. Javance, would you rather see that piece of property developed as industrial or residential? Sure.
Keep saying industrial. It's like more like a planned business park instead of industrial.
we need job. I agree with that. We need job. But again, you should know me now. I'm a number guy, okay? James, I don't know if you remember, 6 months ago, I asked you a list of business you did bring and the jobs, the jobs we got for the last 3 years. The new jobs were 159, okay?
Within that certain frame period? You didn't ask for the entire-
during that 3-year period, after Meta arrived. And to answer, gentlemen back there, Meta bought the land $25K an acre when they bought the land. So if I were just looking at just the budget to the EDA, what the department cost, the acquisition cost for every job was $8,000, okay? If I go to just a 19.3 plus 10 years bond, the interest and all that stuff, we will have to bring 350 jobs per year to arrive at what we are right now. So
I believe you're looking at that short-sighted. You aren't taking into account the property tax that's collected, the real property tax that's collected, personal property tax, the sales tax that's collected, all the jobs, everything that comes with that.
And I don't take account to the pilot they're probably gonna cool get and all the tax break we can give them. So again, I need a business plan. I need something. I can green light $19.3 million out of the blue, just plus everything was going to come. So I know, Mayor, we have a motion.
If it on council, we have a motion and a second. Any final comments before we
I
vote?
was listening for you to answer Sean's question, and I don't think you ever
Oh, no, I want jobs. So yeah, if there was jobs coming in that area, I'd rather see that 1,200 houses, but why? That was voted 4 years ago. There was a PMDP on that, and there is nothing out of the ground, so that means say something.
Well, that followed it being like really fought on the industrial front, but like I said, a lot has changed since then.
So if we have a lot of things that we've been saying we need to get more information about, is there a point to having it next week brought up again?
Well, we have a motion, a second, to move it to the next council meeting, so that's where we currently are unless someone,
I would suggest moving it to a work session so that I can bring some more of this information back.
it's going to a work session, then we don't need to vote on anything though, do we?
Well, you would
We
need
need
to
to vote
probably
now.
rescind your second and your motion, and then make a motion to move it to the next work session.
I will go ahead and rescind my motion to move it to council and state that we move it to the next work session.
I'll still second.
Okay.
I would like to know.
Rescind and second.
Rescind and second, yes.
We got to vote on that.
Any further comment?
Don't,
I'd like to tell Mr. Fenton, I'd like to see what his estimated property tax would come in. We just need more information. I'm not against it or for it yet. I want more information.
Okay?
I don't think a week's going to be enough.
Well, no, work session is what they're saying.
I
2
don't have
weeks.
a problem with doing it at work session, but I do not want to spend $19.3 million unless we got a big
It's
chunk
spending a
of it
lot
already.
more than that by the time.
Yeah,
you
it's
get
going to be a
into
lot
it.
more.
I'm-
Okay, so item number 6, you guys have made a motion and a second to bring it back to the next work session. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no.
No.
Okay, so 1 against next work session and 6 in favor of next work session. So we will hear it on next work session.
Thank you.
All right, so now let's move on to the discussion of the Parks and Recreation Master Plan. I checked with Wald, they hadn't heard from anybody. I've not heard from anybody. However, we did figure out today that this is not out there where anyone public has been able to examine it. So while you have copies, it was not included in the packet, and that was an oversight because it was actually handed out to y'all at the last meeting. So I believe someone in the Parks Department is going to send that to Jeff, and we're going to get it up on the website because the public really needs to be able to see it and weigh in too with any questions or thoughts they have. I talked to David, there were a couple of things that I kind of want to see just added in there. Not any kind of huge, not designing it within the plan, but laying out in the plan that we need a maintenance plan, we need a standards plan, and we need, an inventory management system of those things. So I thought, I'd like to see that added to the plan, but I've not heard anything from any of y'all. So I don't know if you have anything at this point, or if you want to move it along again to give the public a chance to look and see and feed you all back any comments or thoughts they may have.
I think that'd be a good idea.
Yeah, because I'm still reading it.
Yeah, good idea. I'm pretty sure Wald has a electronic version. They must have a PDF version they can send us.
Yeah, it was actually sent to Parks, but it didn't get put up on our website, nor did it get included in an agenda packet. There was some, because remember it was handed out last time, and then it didn't wind up in this one because we were thinking about, y'all talked about it at the last work session kind of thing, so.
It's a good document,
I
a lot
agree
of
with that.
information. I have a lot of things, so if we push it, I keep everything for the next.
What?
I have things, but if we push it, I'll keep it
Okay.
for next time.
Well, I mean, what I would love to get is feedback from the public, either to David or to me or to anybody in the park system, things that you have suggestions about, concerns about, and that we could compile like a master list of those things so that we are prepared to discuss it and it's not a brainstorming session. So you said you haven't heard anything. I've not heard anything. Wald hadn't heard anything, but again, it hadn't been out there for public review. So
It
we
should be tomorrow. It should
Yeah,
be
and we
on
can
there.
put it out there and we'll social media
Maybe
that
already,
it's out
but-
there for.
Yes.
I make a motion to send
Yeah,
it to the next work session.
Motion, is that what you said?
Yes, ma'am.
Motion. Motion by Mr. Juvent, second by Councilwoman George. Any discussion on that? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Okay. And then the final item on the agenda is the City of Gallatin's annual stormwater report. And for that, we do not have Nick Tuttle, but our stormwater person in charge, Mr. Lance Wagner, and Courtney Hopkins, also with the Stormwater Department. Welcome, Lance and Courtney. Sorry you've had such a lengthy meeting to get to present at the end of.
It's very interesting and very always good to be here to see how the city works. So that's interesting. But thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Council. Look to Jeff to start us up here. I'll try to be brief and we'll try to be quick because we all want to get out of here tonight. But Every year, we have to come before you guys and give an annual report on the MS4 side. We have a permit with the Tennessee Department of Environment Conservation, our MS4 permit. And under that permit, one of the requirements is to report how we've done, what we've done, and submit to the state, but also present it in a public forum. So this is that public forum, and we're coming for you to present this tonight. One of the big differences that some of you guys will notice is how it looks. And if you guys have got into it this year, you'll see a lot of words and a lot of weirdness to it. That's the biggest thing we want to kind of report back to you tonight is how the state has changed the reporting format. For years, we've done a really nice report with a lot of pictures, and it shows real well, shows on our website real well, and we've actually had a lot of pride in how we show that to you guys and to the community. I take a lot of pride in the numbers and what we've done, but the state's presentation is not very nice. So
Not pretty.
not very pretty, not very
Not
pretty.
infographic centered.
Yes. So we have some pictures up here, and we'll get to those in a minute. But just as a quick start here, I'm going to turn over to Courtney to kind of discuss some of the changes that we've seen in the permit. Courtney?
Mayor Brown, Council, thank you for having us tonight. So yes, as Lance was discussing, is there a map? Was that it? As Lance was letting you all know, our permitting system has changed, and one of the new requirements that has come down from the EPA is for electronic reporting, which is what's generated this form that our report has been made through. So we've had some changes, and in addition to those changes, they are going to cause some changes in our programs and some retooling of our programs. So this report is more quantitative and less qualitative, which is really going to allow us to be able to evaluate our programs from that quantitative standpoint. New requirements, though, means new program changes. So we're looking at an ordinance update and some updates to our post-construction implementation program. One of the new requirements is for us to inventory every stormwater control measure in the city of Gallatin and ensure the maintenance of those by the owners of those SCMs. So those can be things like ponds, they can be ditches, they can be pervious pavers. All matter of speaking, there's a lot of these things in Gallatin, sorry for the feedback, that we have to inventory. In addition to that inventory, we have to let these people know that they're there. We'll be mapping them, and then enforcement, I will use that word lightly. Not everybody's going to have the means to be able to tend to these structures. Some of them can be really outdated and old. So we'll be doing our best to work with people on that enforcement part of things. So the next thing that I wanted to talk about is our 6 minimum control measures. Thank you, Lance. So that's just public education, citizen involvement, our construction program, which does inspections and it helps ensure that dirt basically remains on people's construction sites, our housekeeping, illicit discharge detection and elimination program, and our post-construction program, which would include inspections and that enforcement that I was just discussing. To follow that, we have some program highlights. So this year, we've had 575 plans reviewed, 32 land disturbance permits issued, 1,107 construction inspections conducted, 31 enforcement activities that took place, 13 public education events, and we had 2 interns this summer help us kickstart that SCM inventory. We also initiated a new partnership with the Cumberland River Compact to help support and implement better public education programs in Gallatin. So you will be hearing from us and seeing from us more often. Does anybody have any questions about the report? So we will be having that posted on the website. So if you have a lot of interest in it, you are welcome to look there. And then the next thing that we would like to do is really just tell everybody thank you. We really want to thank City Council for always working with us and following up when somebody has a concern. Everybody in council does a really great job.
They do.
We'd like to thank you, Mayor Brown, for just being so supportive of our program. And also,
Oh, we can jump in back and forth here. All y'all remember the great Jennifer Watson, and she taught us how to be appreciative of things. So I always think back about her at this time and think about how she taught me to be more appreciative. So I'd just like to kind of reach out to Bill McCord. Bill, you and your planning staff have done a great job helping us get those plans reviewed and keep our stormwater system on track. So I appreciate that. And the floodplain management progress I think we've made in the city as a whole. So thank you for that.
but we also wanted to give Ms. Sharon Burton, a recent retiree, a big thank you for supporting us on Tree Day this past year.
Yes, yes.
We'd also like to thank the Codes Department for coordinating with us on building permits, plans review, and even reporting some illicit discharges.
So I want to reach out to Public Works and Richard DePriest and his crew, Darren Forbes, Roger Thurber, and the whole team over there. We can't manage a system that's not maintained, and we need to see how Public Works does a great job maintaining that system and helping us maintain that system. So shout out to Richard and your crew.
And an extra thank you to Diana Witzman, who hosts the Adopt a Street program and collects much litter all throughout Gallatin. So a big thank you to Diana.
So following that, public utilities, Mr. Kellogg. I really like how, again, our coordination between us and public utilities has grown so much over this last year. So I want to help that coordination. I want to grow that coordination and continue to make sure we work projects together. So we're going to arm a project over in Inniswood right now, and just the two departments working together have really helped address some stormwater concerns that we couldn't address as a department. And working with GPU on that, we can address those things. So I appreciate that, David.
And more specifically also, Leanna Drains and Benny Baggett have been especially helpful with public education. They were just with me in Murfreesboro at Stone Rivers Waterfest, talking about doing some similar implementations here in Gallatin. And also with Tree Day, they've been mentors to me over that program, and we greatly appreciate them. A big thank you to all of the department heads who participated in our stormwater facility inspections, especially the fire department, the police department, Parks and Recreation, and of course, Public Works. I boasted and bragged about the departments last year, and this year they looked even better. So thank you so much for all of the hard work. It's very evident that you take pride in your facilities, and they looked really good. So thank you.
So our police department also helps out in a great way. And really want to point out Jessica Jackson. So she does a lot of property maintenance, but she also does a lot of stormwater concerns back to us and helps us enforce things that we need to help keep our MS4 permit running well. So Chief Mandy, please relay that back to Ms. Jackson.
And of course, we'd like to thank the Cumberland River Compact for partnering with us and investing so deeply into the education of our community.
Last but not least, we have our citizens to thank. We are here to serve the citizens of Gallatin, and we take pride in doing that. And want to just reach out to them, let them know that they are our eyes and ears out there. We cannot cover this much geographic area by ourselves. So when they do call in with complaints and questions and whatnot, we do take that very seriously. It's hard to follow up on every one of them on a strict timeline because there's so many that come in. But we do appreciate them, and we want to make sure they hear that they know that their concerns are heard, and we do appreciate them. Even if it takes us time to get back to them and time to work through that issue, we are trying. With that, we can open up the questions, open the floor for questions on the permit or anything else on the stormwater system.
I have just a basic education request, if you would indulge that. I think it would be helpful for people who may not know what the heck you're talking about. in an MS4 permit to just be told what an MS4 permit is and why it's important. It
Yes,
only
our
has to be a minute
apologies.
description, not,
So the MS4 permit, MS4 stands for Multiple Separate Storm Sewer System. And this permit is what allows the city of Gallatin to discharge stormwater to neighboring cities. And it is our job to comply with this permit, which essentially says that the water quality that's leaving the city is as good as it can possibly be. We are to make sure that we are mitigating any amount of sediment that's leaving Gallatin and ensuring that the wildlife, our creeks, our streams stay clean and beautiful, which is, part of what makes Gallatin beautiful and so appealing is our creeks and our streams. And I think it really boosts the economy to have such beautiful features here.
well, and ultimately our water quality good, so. thank you.
Absolutely.
Any other questions from anybody?
I've got one.
Mr.
How do you
Jacobs?
determine the water quality that's leaving the city? I mean, what method is that?
Oh, yes. So we have our visual stream assessments and our water testing that takes place every 5 years, and we're actually looking to do that with this next budget cycle, is getting somebody out here to check the quality of our streams. So that's with scientific
Y'all
assessments.
do that as a state or federal or?
We hire in a third party to do that, and then it gets reviewed by the state.
Thoughts?
Not a question, just a thank you, guys, because every time I bring you a question, you come back to me and you make it simple enough that I can understand it and bring it back to my constituents. So I really appreciate what you're doing, guys.
Thank you, appreciate that.
I was about to thank you too. You always take care of my problems that people bring right away, so thank you.
We do pride ourselves on that between our team. And of course, it's myself, Courtney here. We also have Ryan Fort on plans review, and Rick Roark is our eyes and ears in the field, our inspector out there. This is probably one of the best stormwater teams in the state. One of the best, I think, probably the best that we've had here in Gallatin ever. So we've got a great team and a great cohesive team that works together to address those things and to plan for the future.
Thanks.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much. All right, that concludes the regular agenda and brings us now to other business. I would ask if any member of this body has other business.
Just have one question, was brought to me by one of my constituents today, who got a letter about removing the speed calming system in Peninsula Drive, and she was wondering what the next step was. If there was a study to, because of the speed, people speeding on there, so.
I don't, oh, it was okay, I think I'm putting this together. Traffic study somewhere?
No, they got a letter and the speed calming, speed bumps or whatever on Peninsula Drive were gonna be removed, and she was wondering what was the next step because she's worried about traffic and speeding there.
I mean, that's a discussion we had not too terribly long ago.
Right, the letter she received was stating that it didn't meet all the threshold for the traffic calming program. I don't want to speak for Aaron or Nick in engineering, but the letter was saying that we are removing the speed bumps and further studies are taking place.
That was what Mr. Gentleman that came and spoke that time. I can't think of his name right now. Mike McClanahan came and spoke about that time. That was what that was about. So,
The engineering department is still, there's further studies taking place.
Thank you.
one else with other business? Okay, I do have a couple of department head report, at least one department head report. I think Mr. Kellogg had something to say. Ms. Russell has something to say. I think that's it.
I'll be quick. Thank you, Mayor, Council. David Kellogg, Superintendent of Public Utilities. I just wanted to follow up on an email I sent out last week about some work that we're doing in our #1 pump station. We had a contractor out last week, set a temporary diesel pump, and then pulled one of the pumps out of the pump station. The pump's been set off for evaluation and a cost estimate on getting it repaired. It is not work that is related to growth. It is maintenance work on our system. It's just something that the station was built in the 1970s, was last gone through in 2010 after the flood, and it's just, we need to work on it. And the bypass pump is to save some of the wear on the second pump that's in the station, and to give us security in case we lose that pump, or if we get a big rainfall, we don't overflow into the creek. So just wanted to update you on that. If you've got any questions, just let me know.
Equally as quick. Just one more thing is that Mr. McCord has been so kind as to let us know that he intends to retire from the city in the not-too-distant future as well. So we have actually posted the city planner position for applicants, and we'll look forward to assessing those incoming applications as well as involving you all in the process once we've been able to get that in. The city planner position, Bill McCord.
Got it.
has
I truly
notified
didn't
us.
know what you were getting up for, because I was planning on asking Mr. McCord last time, after Mr. McCord, anything that you wanted to share this evening, Mr. McCord, and give him that opportunity. So I hate spilling the beans on his behalf, but I think that was, I mean, it's about to be posted, so, huh? Yeah, it's sad when somebody's so happy to leave, but.
That's all I have.
Thank you, Ms. Russell. Anybody else from department heads with anything? Okay, before we leave this evening, I just want to say that, you know, as much as we have struggle and strife and challenges, it's nothing compared to the atrocities in Israel. And I know you see lots of opportunities to help. I would certainly say, you know, prayer is important. And I think more than ever, we can all use a little kindness from someone else. So with that, entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion adjourned.
Second.
Motion second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Ladies and gentlemen, have a good night.
Y'all, can we gather and take a picture?
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that, Stephen.